Welcome, everyone. My name is Sierra Sanchez, webinar producer with CGLR. The webinar will begin shortly and will be recorded. We invite you to connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On Facebook and LinkedIn, follow us at Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow us at Reading by Third. Please use hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learned from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. And before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping tips. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself in the chat box. Please list your name, city or state, and your organization. And be sure when responding to select both panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. We are recording and live streaming this session on Facebook. A link to the recording, as well as any slides, bios, and resources shared, will be sent in a follow-up email to all who registered. Additionally, we'll be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during closing and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. And before we get started, I wanted to turn your attention to our upcoming webinars. This is later this afternoon. Next week, on the 28th, we'll have an exciting doubleheader. First, with a peer exchange learning conversation, which will focus on community-driven initiatives to help families access federal programs that provide income supports and improve economic opportunity. At 3 p.m. that same day, we'll delve into an increasingly urgent topic when we evaluate the impact of climate change on children and the ways we can promote a call to action for child advocates, philanthropists, businesses, and educators to address the challenges. More information and registration links for those sessions will be posted in the chat box now, and we hope you can join us. And joining you now is Emily Samos, Senior Consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Sierra, and hello, everybody. Welcome to each and every one of you, and thank you for joining us for today's GLR Learning Tuesdays webinar titled B-Flation, New Data Reveals Parent-Teacher Disconnect on Student Learning. Today's discussion is actually our second in a mini-series focused on the absolutely essential role of parents and caregivers in ensuring equitable learning recovery and shifting the trends in data on student progress that we've seen lately. Our last session was on October 24th and explored the importance of parent power and strategies deployed by local and national organizations to inform and organize parents to exercise their innate power and act as agents of change and advancement in their children's learning. Today, we will take a step back from the idea of parent power to look at the issue of parents not even knowing there is a need for them to exercise their power and advocate for their kids because they're unaware of their progress in school. We have the unique opportunity to deeply review brand new data from Gallup that reiterates the headlines we've all seen and reveals even more about the disconnect between parents and teachers when it comes to their children's academic progress in school. In actuality, about 90% of parents nationally believe their child is at or above grade level in math and reading, even though we all know the data on the 2022-2023 school year paints a much different reality. This disconnect places young students at risk of not receiving critical assistance because parents are unaware that their children can even benefit from summer learning and after-school learning and tutoring, and et cetera, all the other things that are available. It's essential that schools and communities employ creative ways to inform and connect with families as partners on how best to deepen their child's learning and growth at this crucial time. The new Gallup data has received quite a bit of media attention, and today we get to hear directly from our strategic partners from Learning Heroes who worked with Gallup to generate a report on the data and ensure that it gets into the hands of parents across the country, along with essential resources and tools from them that parents can use to build strong partnerships and teachers and from Learning Heroes. So we will do a deep review of the data and what it reveals, and then engage in a discussion of solutions and strategies. First, about Learning Heroes campaign called Go Beyond Grades and how they are working with school systems and communities. And then from several local leaders who are using the Go Beyond Grades tools and other strategies to inform and prepare parents to ask the right questions of schools and build working relationships with teachers. We have much to discuss, and we are really excited to dive into it all. And so today's discussions will be moderated by Tracy Potts, who is the Executive Director of the Eisenhower Institute at Gettysburg College and Advisory Board Chair at Learning Heroes. Potts spent 3 decades as an award-winning broadcast journalist, most recently as Senior Washington Correspondent for NBC News Channel. She has also served on the National PTA Board of Directors and as a family engagement trainer and facilitator. So we're really excited to have Tracy with us today. And now I'm honored to welcome and briefly introduce our esteemed panelists with us today in alphabetical order. And please note that the full bios have already been linked in the chat, so I'm just previewing who we have with us today. So we have with us Michelle Connolly, who is the Executive Director for the United Way of West Central Mississippi, serving 15 partnering agencies in a 5-county area. With 16 years of experience in the local education system and 9 in the nonprofit world, she brings passion and a unique set of skills to her service area. She also serves as a GLR community lead in her region. Lisa Greening started St. Louis's chapter of the Campaign for grade level reading called Turn the Page STL to improve 3rd grade reading proficiency in the St. Louis community. For 10 years, she was Executive Director of Ready Readers, a St. Louis nonprofit dedicated to preparing preschool-age children from low-income communities to become readers. Kim Myers is the Director of Get Troop Reading in LaGrange, Georgia. She retired from teaching with 32 years of service, where she spent 22 of those years as the media specialist at Hollis Hand Elementary. During her career, she was Teacher of the Year at McDonough Elementary and Teacher of the Year at Hollis. In 2020, she was hired to be the first director of Get Troop Reading, which is also the local GLR coalition down there. We also have David Park. He is a Senior Vice President of Strategy and Communications at Learning Heroes and has extensive experience in communication, strategic planning, community engagement, and development. Prior to Learning Heroes, David was Vice President of Mission Advancement at America's Promise Alliance, where he helped develop and implement the Grad Nation campaign to increase the national high school graduation rate. Rachel Powers is a proud St. Louis native and has spent her career elevating the voices of communities to recognize and actualize their power to make change. In her previous role, she served as communications manager for Noble Schools in Chicago, Illinois. There, she managed external and internal communications, public and media relations, social media, and brand management for the organization's 17 high schools and 1 middle school. John Robinson Sr. is Director of Education for Houston's Urban League and is responsible for the development and management of education strategy for all programs within the Education and Youth Development Department of the Urban League, communities, and schools. As part of this, he oversees Houston's national award-winning National Urban League Banner Program, Project Ready, post-secondary college access programs. And lastly, we have Howard Winchester. He is Senior Manager of Communications at Learning Heroes and has a vested interest and focus in digital and social media development with a variety of prior experiences in communication and public relations. Prior to Learning Heroes, he served as Chief Communications Associate at NASTAD and uses his out-of-the-box and creative thinking to help inform and engage different audiences. So welcome to all of you. We're so glad to have that chance to introduce you and look forward to engaging with you and learning from you. And I am now super excited to turn it over to Tracy Potts to get our conversation going.
Thanks, Emily, and thanks everyone for being here today. I have been really excited about this conversation for a couple of reasons. I come at this as an advocate, someone who for a very long time has worked in my local schools, in my district, on the national level, as Emily mentioned, to advocate on behalf of children and their education. I have come at this now as an educator. As Emily mentioned, I work with higher education at Gettysburg College, but have long worked with K-12 educators as well. And probably most importantly, certainly most importantly to me, I come at this as a parent, a mother of 3 and a grandparent of 2. And I understand in a very hands-on way how important it is for parents to get good information and for us to be empowered to be part of our children's education. So without further ado, I really want to jump into this conversation quickly with my colleague, David Park. David, working with Learning Heroes, is really going to walk us through the data at some point, but let's start right there with parents and the importance of parent voice. Because David, as we've worked on this Go Beyond Grades campaign, as we've worked in the past on things, the one thing that really jumps out at me is what the parent experience is like when we're looking at how to elevate the learning and the learning opportunities of children.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And I just wanted to acknowledge Tracy, who is just such a superpower, such a force for good in the education community. Tracy is Learning Heroes, the chair of our advisory board. She's also a spokesperson for Go Beyond Grades. So I am just so humbled to be here having this conversation with you. You've brought light to this issue, which is, in my mind, one of the most important issues in education today. So thank you, Tracy. Again, it's just so exciting to be here. And you're absolutely right. The data is incredibly important and very rich, but what's data without stories? Really stories, parents' stories, that's so important to kind of lift up these stories and amplify parent and family voices. And that's what we've done through the Go Beyond Grades campaign. And as we release this Gallup data, we want to make sure that we're actually listening to parents and families as well. So we're highlighting the data that's critically important, and we're telling stories and letting parents tell their own stories about their education journey. And in just a few minutes, we'll show a video of one parent's story.
Yeah, let's hop into that, because that video, I think, is very powerful, Rashida's video, to show how parents experience this. And you're right, the data is incredibly important. It's a guideline for us, but it's really those parent stories that help us understand what the data mean. And I know in the process of working on this, we're going to break down what B-Flation is. A couple of people have asked me, what is that? What does that mean? So we're going to break that down. But David, let's go ahead and talk about that video and really see what we're talking about when it comes to how parents are experiencing trying to help their children.
Perfect.
Sound it out. What's the first three letters say? What's the first three letters? Act. It turns two words into one word.
Sharita Jones is a hands-on mom.
That's what you were saying.
She felt her daughter Christiana was doing well in her last school, especially after all the time away from the classroom during the pandemic.
Christiana was a great student in class, not a behavior problem at all. I thought that she was doing great from the last report card.
But when her daughter Christiana moved to a new school, she learned her good report cards had not been telling the full story.
It was extremely surprising to find out that she was on a lower reading level than what I thought she was.
The new school's assessments showed the 9-year-old was actually 3 grade levels behind.
Add the rest of it in there. True. Lee.
Actually.
So what's the word?
Actually.
Exactly. Actually.
Good grades can be deceiving. Maya Martin Cadogan is the founder and executive director of Parents Amplifying Voices in Education.
What we actually know is that many kids are not on grade level, and that grades are oftentimes reflecting things that are not just about academics. They're reflecting behavior, attendance, participation.
In fact, there's a dramatic disconnect with parents when looking at their own kids on how much academic learning has suffered since the end of the pandemic. Nationally, 9 out of 10 parents, regardless of race, income, or geography, believe their child is at or above grade level. But just 26% of 8th graders are proficient in math, and only 29% are proficient in reading. What should parents do?
Parents need to first just ask questions of their child's teacher. They need to ask what grade level their children were reading on, what level math their children were doing, and then ask what you can do at home with your child in order to support them, and what additional programs they might need access to extend their learning.
I would say to parents to not be afraid, to ask for help. Having that shared power between me and the teacher is a wonderful feeling.
There have never been more resources available than right now to help kids get back on track. To learn more about how you can help your child, check out gobeyondgrades.org.
Wow, that's amazing. So we talked about the parent voice, but and I know you're going to get into the numbers, but David, this is not a new issue, is it?
It's not, Tracy. In fact, we first uncovered this, and it's probably actually been going on well before we uncovered this first in 2016 through Learning Heroes data. We found that 90% of parents think their child is at or above grade level, which became a clarion call for us. It really galvanized us, and it made us realize that this could be a focus and this could be something that we could work with a lot of our partners on, and we have since that time. There are a couple of things, however, that are new in this data. First of all, I mean, there's some different cuts of the data. There's some different ways of looking at the data, but first is this moment in time. I don't know if you happen to see the New York Times editorial this weekend, but there was an editorial in the New York Times that talked about learning loss, and it really spelled out that it said that the school closures that took 50 million kids out of the classroom at the start of the pandemic may prove to be the most damaging disruption in the history of American education, setting the student progress in math and reading back by 2 decades and widening the already huge achievement gap. So we're in an all hands on deck moment right now. And the second thing that's really new in this data, which is actually exciting to me, is the focus on solutions. And that's why I'm so glad that we have so many community partners with us today talking about this, because there's great things going on in communities, and they're really tackling this issue head on. So given the fact that we understand the problem and we know what works, it's time to be more intentional about fixing it. And that's what this conversation is all about.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because so often we bring problems to people and we break it down, and that's great and it's certainly useful, but then people leave thinking, what can I do about it? This is not that day. You all are going to leave knowing today and having some really stark examples of what you can do about it. I do want to give you some significant time to dig into this data because it's amazing, but just briefly before that, talk to us a little bit about what we learned about Black parents. You said it a minute ago, David. What we saw, the learning loss that we saw over the last couple of years with the pandemic, in some cases really shed a light on the achievement gaps and the opportunity gaps that we had already seen in some communities. What are we now learning about African-American parents and how they are reacting to this?
Yeah, Tracy, it's interesting. There were a lot of really fascinating findings through the Gallup data, one of which was particularly about Black families. And that's part of what makes this research so hopeful. So just to provide a snapshot, and I'll go into a little bit more detail later, but Black families are much more likely to put the responsibility of their child's success on themselves, more than on their children, more than on their child's teacher, more than the principal or anyone else. This points to an opportunity to partner up with your child's teacher with a focus on learning and well-being. We also presented a vignette to all parents that took this survey to imagine that they had learned that their child received a B on their report cards in math, but also scored below grade level on 2 standardized tests. And nearly 3/4 of Black parents reported that they would be extremely or very concerned, compared to slight majorities of Hispanic and white families. So all parents would be concerned, but especially Black parents. And so we, again, think that this is an opportunity. When parents are concerned, they take action. And speaking of action, while parents of all racial and ethnic backgrounds reported a high likelihood of taking several different measures, Black families were significantly more likely to report that they'd take action across the board, get their child a tutor, talk to their child's teacher, talk to the child, seek online resources, and more. This is just one of many, many things that we found that are really interesting about this new data.
David, you said it, when parents know, they take action. And today we are going to enlighten through our colleagues directly to parents and all the agencies that I saw popping up in the chat, really give them the tools to help parents understand what's going on. So David, I want to give you a few minutes to really dig into this data and tell us what it's all about.
Sure. Thank you, Tracy. So I'm going to go ahead and spend some time talking about the data, and you can go ahead to the next slide. We've talked a little bit about parent stories. I do want to reiterate that as much as possible, we really amplify the voices of parents. You heard Sharita's story. Maricela and Ruben are both on our family advisory board. We did short videos with them and other parents just to show you how much this resonated. This was in the spring and the fall when we launched Go Beyond Grades. We got 300,000 video views of these short family videos, videos of parents telling their story. So it's really something that works. Parents like to hear, even if their stories aren't exactly kind of what my story is or your story is or your neighbor's story, still it's really, really something that works very well in terms of highlighting and amplifying stories of parents. So if we could go to the next slide, I'll go ahead and jump into some of the data. Real quickly on methodology, this research is brand new. It was collected in October of last year. Almost 2,000 parents were surveyed, parents with a public school child in K through 12, with moms and dads, legal guardians, family, foster parents, step parents, and so forth. The survey was conducted in English. And while about 22% of all the people who took the survey, their kids are on IEPs or 504s. Parents who said their child had a diagnosed and significant cognitive disability were not part of this study. Responses were collected using the Gallup panel, which is the gold standard in polling. Gallup oversampled Black and Hispanic parents in order to identify differences between racial and ethnic groups, and the margin of error was about 3.1 percentage points. So go on to the next slide, please. And here you'll see almost 9 in 10 parents, 88% in reading and 89% in math, say their child is performing at or above grade level in either reading and math. So this is across race and ethnicity and geography and income level. 9 out of 10 parents are saying their child is just fine in reading and math. And that's really the issue that's at the forefront of what we're talking about today. So going to the next slide, please. And we asked, how confident are you that your child will be prepared for entrance into and success in college upon graduation from high school? And you'll see here that there's a lot of confidence as well. 61% of all parents said that they were very or extremely confident that their child is going to be well prepared for college. That's a lot of parents. 6 in 10 are saying that their child is going to be well prepared for college. Now, the interesting thing is, we've done this research for a long time at Learning Heroes. We've asked some of the same questions, and this percentage is actually going down. So I think more parents are starting to question if their child is really as prepared for college as they think. But still, 6 in 10 parents say their child is very or extremely confident that their child will be prepared for college. Next slide. And so here is what the survey is all about. It's B-Flation. Almost 8 in 10 parents overall, 79%, report their child is getting mostly B's or better. 79% of all parents, and it doesn't fluctuate that much among the different groups. Black parents a little bit lower at 73%, white parents a little bit higher at 80%, Hispanic parents 75%, but nearly 8 in 10 parents say their child is receiving mostly B's or better. But B's don't mean what we think they do. You know, unfortunately, grades don't always equal grade level, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So go on to the next slide, please. And this is really interesting. We asked, when you think about your child's report cards, what grades do they typically get? We asked that for parents who say their children are at or above grade level. It's 85%, so that's not totally unexpected. 85% said of parents who say that their child is at or above grade level say that their kids typically get B's and above. But look at the line below. So this is among parents who say that their kids are below grade level. Still, even though parents know that their child is below grade level, 36% of them, close to 4 in 10, still say their kids are getting mostly B's or better on their report cards. Next slide. And I know there's a lot of data on this, but this is actually one of the most interesting slides because this is actually a new cut at the data. We haven't done this before. So we asked as a parent, to what extent are you worried about each of the following? And we know that parents are extremely worried about a lot of things. But among the percentage, among the parents who say that their kids are at or above grade level, this is the list to the left. You see those things that make the top of the list. The impact of social media on your child, and I'm sure a lot of you can testify that that's a concern of yours as well. Your child experienced stress or anxiety, your child's emotional well-being, being able to pay the bills. Those are all things that parents worry a whole lot about. And these are, again, parents who say their children are at or above grade level in math. But look at the very bottom of the list. That's where you'll find your child's math skills, your child's reading skills. Only 22% say that their child's math skill is a top concern, and only 20% say their child's reading skills are a top concern. But then what about if you ask those parents who say that their children are below grade level in math? When you just look at those responses of parents who are below grade level, math skills goes from the bottom of the list all the way to the top of the list. And the reason this is so important is because we know that when parents are concerned, they take action. And so all of a sudden, parents who say their children are below grade level in math, your child's math skills, these other things are still on the minds of parents and very top of mind in terms of concerns, but your child's math skills goes to the top of the list. Next slide. This is a little bit tough to read, so I'm going to walk you through it. But we asked parents who said that their kids are below grade level in reading and math. We found out that they are much more likely to discuss academic topics with their teacher. So you look here and look at the third line where it says, my concerns about my child's academic progress. So among parents who say their child is below grade level in math, 78% say they have spoken to their child's teacher about their child's academic progress, and 74% among those who say their child is below grade level in reading, compared to only 50% among all parents. So basically this says that once you understand that your child may not be where you think they are in terms of their reading or math, you'll take some actions. Next slide, please. And here's that scenario that I talked about before. So we asked, again, imagine that your child received a B or on their report card in math. Your child's year-end state test results indicate that they were below grade level in math, and your child's results on other standardized tests indicate your child was below grade level. How concerned would you be? And we found that among all parents, 56%, which is very significant, 56% said that they would be very or extremely concerned. But again, look at Black parents. It's 72% said that they would be very or extremely concerned given this very specific scenario. And so again, we have an opportunity with more measures to help make sure that parents get the support that they need. Next slide. And they're also much more likely to take action just across the board. And again, the results from Black parents really stand out here. And this is with that scenario before, a B in math and below grade level on 2 standardized tests. Regardless of whether it's talking to my child about what they think they can do to learn the skills to improve their grade, or getting an in-school tutor or a private tutor, accessing online learning, and asking the teacher if your child is on grade level. Across the board, parents will take action, and especially Black parents, with 78% of Black parents saying that they'll talk to their child about what they can do. 50% of Black parents say that they would get an in-school tutor, compared to only 25% of parents across the board, all parents. So really, the more information they have, the more likely they are to take specific actions. Next slide. So I'm going to leave here just with 3 insights. And the first insight is, let's start with reading and math. Let's fight the right battle. So there's so much noise right now about culture wars. And this isn't about the books kids should or shouldn't read. This is really about, is my child at grade level? And if they're not, getting them the support that they need. This is about child's reading skills. So 81% of parents say that their child needs strong reading skills to get a good job. 81% also say math is necessary for my child's success in life. And so this is really where we should be focusing our attention. Let's start with reading and math. And I know that's what a lot of you are doing in your communities. Next slide. Let's also lean into parent-teacher relationships. So again, most parents hold themselves either the most responsible or the second most responsible to their child for their child's success in school. And so this really sets us up nicely to establish those relationships between parents and teachers, because parents see themselves as is incredibly involved in their child's education and really taking ownership of their child's education. And so this is yet another opportunity that this data exposes. And finally, the third insight on the next slide, parents should be connected with multiple measures of achievement. We know that teachers have a lot of different measures that they use to assess a child's grade level in reading and math. And parents, unfortunately, rely just on report cards. And report cards are great, but they really measure a lot more than just grade level. They measure attendance and whether a child participated, whether they handed in their homework. All of these things are very important. But look at 64% say that your child's report card is the most helpful source of information to let your child know or let you know whether your child is performing on grade level. It's important to give parents multiple measures of their child's achievement. Next slide. And so, yeah, and Tracy, maybe you want to.
Yeah, let me hop in here.
For this next
yeah, because first of all, wow. This is eye-opening information, and I think it really helps us understand some things that are concerning, but perhaps more importantly, some things that are inspiring and encouraging, because you showed us not only from stories, but also now with data, that when parents have multiple measures, when they have good information, they take action. And that's really why we're here. You know, it's been a really tough last 2 or 3 years, certainly, for both parents and educators. And how do we approach this without the blame game, right? Without blaming teachers for, you know, pandemic slide, without blaming parents for not hopping in and doing more, but really trying to strengthen that relationship and avoiding the finger pointing.
Yeah, I totally agree. So now is not the time for finger pointing, and really it's no one's fault. I mean, honestly, when we ask teachers, I mean, teachers don't have the time, they don't have the training that they need to really engage parents in these very, very important conversations about their child's achievement and if they're at grade level. And so it's certainly not the teacher's fault. It's definitely not the parents' fault. Parents respond to the information they're given, right? And so many parents, they really respond to the report cards because the report card is what they value the most. The report card is what they see the most. And so that's, of course, what they're going to respond to.
It's what we grew up with, right?
It's what everybody grew up with, right?
With.
And so it's no wonder that they're relying just on the report card, but there's so many other ways. There's so many other measures to understand if your child is achieving. And that's what this is all about.
And so the idea was that Go Beyond Grades is really an education for educators. I know we've had a ton of educators on that website, but also for parents.
Exactly. And so we like to make our research actionable. And so if you go to the next slide, Learning Heroes did a public awareness campaign in the spring and summer of this year. And we took this local data in terms of the percentage of parents in communities, and we focused on 6 communities throughout the country. The percentage of parents in these communities who think their child is at or above grade level. And we juxtaposed that with the local assessment data based on the kids who actually are at grade level. So here's a billboard, and we did billboards. We partnered with Clear Channel in these 6 cities. So 92% of Houston parents think their child does math at grade level. 34% of kids actually do. This was before the summer. And so the call to action was all about summer programs. And so we had a landing page where parents could go in Houston to get information about programs in math and reading and summer camps and other opportunities for parents that they could take advantage of in Houston. And we just had a tremendous response. And we have one of our partners, John Robinson from Houston, who can talk a little bit more about that. And go to the next slide. New York City was another city where we had this campaign, Go Beyond Grades campaign, and we were lucky enough to through our partnership with Clear Channel to do an ad in Times Square. And here it is, the 90% of New York City parents who think their child is do math at grade level versus the 26% of kids who actually do. And then on the next slide, you'll see in my hometown of Washington, D.C., we actually had bus shelter ads. And here's an ad that was at a bus shelter with a QR code where parents could go directly to the landing page and get all sorts of free resources in English and Spanish. But 84% of D.C. parents think their kids do math at reading level. And unfortunately, only 10% of kids in D.C. schools actually do that grade level work in math. And next slide. Through our anchor partners in these 6 cities, we had parent workshops, and John will talk about some of those parent workshops, but it's really important to meet parents where they are, to provide this information. And John will talk a little bit more about how he did that in Houston, but this is important information with these really simple and important calls to action for parents in communities across the country. Next slide, please. And what we're really, really excited about, I'm sorry for one more data slide, but this is important, is that parents who recalled the Go Beyond Grades ad campaign were much more likely to act. And that's what this is all about, is getting parents to act, to take these actions that are so important to get the support that their kids need. And so you'll look here on the left, and it's like, ask my child's teacher if my child is on grade level. Well, 25% of parents who did not recall seeing the ads said this is an action that they have taken, compared to 48%, almost double the parents who had actually seen that ad and those campaign ads. So this speaks to how effective messaging and the right messenger can really make a difference in communities across the country. We were so excited to be able to do this evaluation of our campaign. And what we saw in the communities is this messaging really made a difference. Parents took action.
David, that's so exciting. And I can't wait to talk to John and Michelle and Kim and some of our other partners who are on standby about this to really see how this is playing out in local communities. But again, I think this is the money slide, right? This is the bottom line. When parents are informed, they actually take action. And that, to me, is the really encouraging piece of all of this data that we're learning about. Thank you so much for walking us through all of that. And hopefully we'll have a chance to come back, but I do want to turn at this point to our panel, Michelle, Lisa, Rachel, John, and Kim, all of whom Emily introduced earlier. They're all standing by to talk about the fascinating things that are happening on the ground in their communities. And I'd really love to start with Rachel and Lisa, who are working together in St. Louis. We have seen the impact of the Go Beyond Grades campaign, the campaign for grade level reading, also doing incredible work. So for both of you, why don't you really just sort of start out talking a little bit about your organizations and how you're approaching this, Rachel. I know you've been using some of the Go Beyond Grades tools. How is that working in St. Louis?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm Rachel Powers. So I'll jump right in. So the Opportunity Trust is a nonprofit organization. We work on behalf of students in St. Louis to really increase access to high quality schools across our city. One way we do that is really to engage parents. We know that when parents are involved, and I keep hearing this over and over today, is when parents understand and they know what the issue is, they take action. And we know that to be true because we work with parents. We have worked with organizations that directly go to parents and help have these engagements. And so that's part of the work that we're doing, is to really bring the issue to parents so they understand how, one, that there is an issue and that there are other ways that they can look at how their children are succeeding in schools. And then two, really to bridge that gap between the parent-teacher partnership, because what we don't want to do is just equip people with knowledge and no real direction to take that and really have actionable steps to take. And so the Go Beyond Grades campaign has been great to tap into, to really give those tools to parents directly and say, okay, now that you know, and luckily, and Lisa will talk a little bit more about this, in Missouri, we've got a law now that requires parents to be notified when their child is not reading on grade level. And so coupled with that rolling out this year and this Go Beyond Grades campaign, it was a prime time to say, okay, parents, now that you have the knowledge and the understanding, here are some tools and here are some ways that we can walk through this together and really partner with teachers to make sure that we can get what's best for our children.
Yeah, and that's what's so important, right? Because it's a partnership, but it's a relationship. It builds over time, and it really begins with the awareness. So Lisa, talk to us about your GLR campaign, about Turn the Page St. Louis, and what's going on with this new law. I really wanted to dig into this, and maybe we can get into it later if we don't have time to fully explain it now. But parents are getting these letters now that say, hey, your child is below grade level. That can be scary. And that's why people like Rachel and Lisa are here to help walk them through. No, it's not scary, but here's how you're going to support your child.
It is scary, actually, I would say. When I started this work 3 years ago, we started a campaign chapter here in St. Louis for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. What we saw, and I'll just tell you, last year's score is that in our 7 lowest performing school districts here in St. Louis, only 17% of the third graders were reading proficiently. 17%. So this is an issue. And the trends of 90% of families thinking their kids are reading on grade level is a shock to many families. And so a year and a half ago, we passed a Missouri Senate bill very similar to about the bills that were passed in about half the states across the country, a reading success plan bill. And the 3 major parts of it was that, one, our teachers would get professional development training in teaching children how to read, how to decode words. The second part was these letters that starting in October of 2023, every parent who has a child enrolled in the public or charter schools in the state of Missouri, their child was reading below grade level, were required by law to receive a letter. Some schools sent them out to all families, but they were required for those who were reading below grade level. And then, coupled with that, the teachers were required to come up with a reading success plan for each child that's below grade level. This is all good because it's all real information, and it allows teachers to work with families to get kids grade level, but it was a hard hit for our teachers and our families this fall. And so part of our job is to inform and help families and teachers, because we can provide resources, and you can show that resource slide if you want, something that Turn the Page is doing, but you can provide all the resources, but what's really difficult is the trusting relationships. So the trusting relationship between the family and the teacher is vital. The trusting relationship between, so we have these in and around St. Louis, and you can go on that QR code and you can find tutoring, high impact tutoring for your child in school and after school, family resources. We instilled an hour of literacy a day in our largest summer camp programs this summer. And so you could look at which programs your child can go to that will improve their literacy skills, actually, early childhood programs. And you can give all this information, but where we struggle, but we're getting there, because Rachel and we're getting there, is how do you build those trusted relationships so that we as a community can move forward to improve reading proficiency rates.
Yeah, Lisa, I love this this graphic and this information that you're sharing in a very captivating way for communities and for parents to see. And I love seeing how you and Rachel and your organizations are both working to support these parents who are getting this information that they need, right? David and I just talked about it. Parents need more information. But that's not the end of the story. What happens when they get the information? How do we sort of do some hand holding here to help them understand what to do? So we're seeing a little bit of how that's working in St. Louis. John, I want to bring you into the conversation because I'm really interested to learn how the Urban League is approaching this and how you're dealing with this in Houston. How are you using some of these resources and serving as an anchor partner of Go Beyond Grades, of communities in support of parents? You're director of education there. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in Houston.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Here in Houston, the Urban League believes that every child in the greater Houston area and across this great nation of ours deserves a chance to be great. We believe that wholeheartedly. And so what we've done is we have partnered with a number of funders here in the Houston area, from the United Way of Greater Houston to the Bush Foundation to HEB. There's just a number of funders who have partnered with us and give to us a large amount of dollars so that we can go out and do 50 to 60 family and community engagements across the school districts here in Houston, bringing anywhere from 150 to 300 families into a building each and every night of the week, where our objective has always been to help them to understand, for their babies to have a chance to be college bound, corporate bound, and community sound, we've got to get them reading. Reading is the key to everything. When you can't read, you can't handle math or any of the other core area courses that we're talking about here today. And so while reading is the key, we've got to get them reading early and often. And so what we do is we go into these schools, and we've partnered with these schools, and they promote our event like crazy because we're feeding everybody Frenchie's chicken. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Frenchie's chicken.
I was going to ask you, John, how do we get them there?
Listen, if you ever come to Houston, call me. I'm going to take you to Frenchie's chicken. It's the greatest chicken in the world. But we feed them. When you do family and community engagement, listen, you've got to make sure that you have everything there for a family so that when they go back home, they can put those babies down and get them ready for school the next day. So when you say we're going to do family and community engagements, you've got to meet people at the door with a smile, helping them to understand that they belong into this facility where you are. You got to feed them. You got to provide them with giveaway items. We provide every family with 4 or 5 brand new books to build home libraries, every single engagement. And so when we do these, they know what's coming. They call me in Houston the Scholastic Book Man or the Frenchie's Chicken Man. And when they tell folks that I'm coming, they know to show up. But the thing that I want to impress upon you today is we were teaching the importance of early literacy and how parents have got to help us to get this work done. We cannot get this done without the help of parents and caregivers. Yeah. But I did not know all of the pieces that I received when I got the documentation, the data from Learning Heroes. When I saw that, it brought to my mind, I was missing something. That's what I was missing, to tell parents their assumptions are wrong. We got to go back and do this thing all over again. So we implemented the pieces from Learning Heroes about parents missing the opportunity to really find out where their children were, and that they have got to be partners with teachers and with school districts to really help us to develop and get their kids where they need to be. Every child in Houston and across the nation deserves a chance to be great. But what we've got to do is find ways to get parents into our buildings, because in Houston, we've got a number of parents, like every other city, where parents have no resources. Many of the parents can't read themselves. They're struggling to walk into buildings because of the experiences that they've had. But we've got to do different things to encourage them to come. So we promote that we're going to feed you. We're going to give away gift card door prizes. We're going to give every child that comes in the door a number of brand new books to begin to build or enhance your home library. And then we show those parents how to use those books, because many of them don't know how to use them and read. And so these are the keys to really getting this message across, that you cannot assume anything. You really have to partner with your teachers, your school district, to make sure that you get the right information about where your babies are. You talk to your babies, parents, caregivers from across the nation, those of you who are on this webinar with us, you are your child's first teacher. You're responsible for making sure that your babies have a chance at greatness. It's your job to go into these buildings to make sure that you're getting the very best information about where your babies are, and then come to some of the FACE events at the Houston Area Urban League so that we can show you how to use books to get them on target, not reading at grade level, but reading above grade level. Every one of your babies deserves a chance to be great, but it's your responsibility to help us get them there.
I love that high bar that you're setting, John. And just wanted to hop in quickly because you said something that I think is so key and so important here. I was just talking about it in an interview about this last week, which is belonging and empowering parents to understand that you are supposed to be a part of this process. And that's why we're calling you in. That thing that you said about, our own experiences, maybe I wasn't the best student, maybe I dropped out. I mean, there are all kinds of situations that parents have had that sometimes make us afraid to walk into a school building or afraid to deal with this. And so,
yes.
I love, first of all, that you brought that in, and also that you were already doing this work and doing great work in Houston when you came across data that helped you elevate that work. Yes. Rachel, I see you itching to jump back into this conversation, but can I put a pin in it for a quick second? Because I really want to bring Michelle, because it's not just in St. Louis, it's not just in Houston, it's happening in other places. And so, Michelle, I would love for you to tell us about how you're working with parents in Mississippi, and specifically how the United Way is helping with parent-teacher conferences. This time of year in November is often when many parents meet their teachers for the first time if they didn't go to a back-to-school event. And what is that conversation like? And more importantly, now, what is it supposed to be like? How is the United Way working with this in your community?
Well, Tracy, I am a firm believer, like everyone here on this webinar, including John, he's extremely inspirational to all of us, is that parents are our primary educators. They want what is best for their child. They need the information. And for many of the parents, the report card is the sole piece of document that they use to determine the child's success. And I know that the report card is not the only piece of information that a parent should be looking at when determining the success of their child. I believe it's only a piece of the pie that needs to be considered, but there are other larger pieces of the pie that they need to better understand. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like standardized testing. I know that. Teachers groan about standardized testing, children groan about standardized testing, and parents do also. But so very often the children take the standardized test, and then the only information or feedback that they ever get from the school is that one sheet of paper that's put in their Monday folder to give them what their child did on their standardized test. I don't know about you, but sometimes those documents are hard to understand. They are hard to interpret. They make absolutely no sense unless you are an educator. So we believe that we're communicating this to the parents, but we aren't. We are just putting that in the folder thinking that we have done what we are supposed to do. So I strongly believe that not only the report card, but the standardized test results need to be better explained, and we need to have a better understanding of what they are. And we also need to know the socio-emotional track of our child in the classroom. How are they interacting with other students? What is that looking like? All of this is important when we're talking about the whole child and their performance in the classroom. And the only way you can get that is by a parent-teacher conference. And like John said, there are many parents that don't want to enter an academic facility at all because of what they experienced as students in a school, or they feel like the teacher or the administrator is talking down to them. So there's no reason that I need to go because they don't believe that I am the primary educator. And some of them, for whatever reason, they don't understand that they are the primary educator. And so very often these parent-teacher conferences happen when something has happened. When there is a situation that is extremely emotional and confrontational, and those parent-teacher conferences typically don't go very well, to be honest with you, because there is a lot of emotion that is wrapped up in those conversations, and there are blaming and there is confrontation, and they're not good experiences, and they only reiterate what the parent thought when they were walking in, that it wasn't going to be a good situation. So I firmly believe that we need to help parents by modeling with them. We need to either model parent-teacher conferences before they go into the parent-teacher conference, or we need to ask to be a part of those parent-teacher conferences so that we can hold their hand, so that we can model them the right questions to ask. We can model to them exactly what they need to do to gain the information that they need to have in order to make an informed, educated decision about the educational journey that their child is in. We need to be able to help them not just share their concerns, but to also gather the information that's going to be useful for them, gather the tools that are going to be useful for them. There's absolutely no one on this webinar right now that does not have fantastic tools that they can offer parents for literacy intervention. I have absolutely no doubt. But if the parent doesn't know to seek out that literacy intervention, then what good is that going to do for them? And the only way they're going to know it is authentic, true, trusting conversations with parents. And we serve as the intermediary, I believe, in order to make that happen through modeling, through holding their hand, through being there with them.
Wow. And I love that the United Way, right? We think of the United Way around this time of year, right? When we get that email, I got it the other day at work. Hey, would you like to contribute to the United Way? But to see you so passionately and effectively involved in helping with education in your community, I think is laudable. Let's turn the clock back a little bit. I want to bring Kim into the conversation because, Kim, you work with parents at a different level before the children enter K-12, before they're even getting report cards. Can you talk to me? By the way, Kim's from my home state of Georgia. She works with Get Troop Reading, which along with some of our other guests here, Michelle and others, are part of the GLR campaign, your local GLR campaign. So you're focusing more on those early childcare years. So talk to me a little bit about how you help parents prepare kids for pre-K, prepare kids for kindergarten, and how are you helping them be aware so that we're now creating a new generation of parents who do feel like they belong, who are now walking into feeling, hey, I should be asking some questions here.
Right, Tracy, exactly. And I mean, everyone has had such great comments and the enthusiasm is wonderful. And we do focus on early learning, trying to get, so often you can't just drop the kids off once they're 5 to pre-K or kindergarten and expect the work to start. As we all know, all of us on this call, it starts from birth, starts from the 3rd trimester. And so we have a huge focus in our community to focus on that early brain development. And we're a basics community. If you have heard of the basics.org, we're promote the Basics Troop County. That is our early brain development initiative. And we are really trying to educate parents that, yes, like everybody has said, they are their child's first teacher. I love the data that David showed us, that the parents realize that there was that huge percentage where they feel the ownership for their child's education and success in school. So we're trying to prepare parents and let them know how they can increase that early brain development in their everyday life. And we do that through a community saturation model where we have billboard campaigns, we have businesses, we have the school system, we have childcare centers, our hospital, our other healthcare facilities, all promoting the basics, which are 5 simple principles. You can learn about the basics at thebasics.org. But we just want them to see, parents to see these 5 simple principles for early brain development everywhere they go, so they can start looking and measuring those milestones and realize the impact that their simple everyday interactions with their kids with their babies, how much that improves and builds that brain. So when they do start pre-K and they start kindergarten, they're ready to learn. They're ready to learn how to read through the science of reading and all the great stuff. Georgia has also passed 2 recent bills focused on reading and the science of reading. We haven't gone as far as to send out a letter to each parent, but I do know in our local school system, who we also work closely with, they're required in grades K-5 for every parent and teacher to have a parent school compact. And it is basically a contract where the parents and the teachers sit down at the beginning of the year, mid-year, and at the end of the year to talk about their the child's goals, where their reading levels are, what they need to be working on, whether it's in reading or math or, but, it gives the parents the opportunity to ask questions and for the parent and teacher to work as a team to not just wait on that report card that comes, at the end of the first 9 weeks or the end of the semester, for it to be a real document that they're working on throughout the year.
Kim, I love that you are part of this conversation because you are underscoring the fact that when we talk about the campaign for grade level reading doesn't happen once you're in the grade. There's a foundation that has to be laid, and that is the foundation that you're laying with this. I love that these organizations, the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, Learning Heroes, both at the national level with you guys as partners on the local level, are really all working toward the same goal. We've got just a couple of minutes left before I want to bring Howard into the conversation to talk a little bit about that. But Rachel, I wanted to go back to you because before we talked about family stories. We talked about that earlier. And I know when you and I talked earlier, tell me a little bit about what's happening when parents come in, they now have the information, they're looking for the hand holding, but they don't know what it looks like. What does that look like in St. Louis?
Absolutely. I was so excited because I had a one story I'll tell. A parent, we were at an event with Bridge to Hope, which is a parent organization that we work with here in St. Louis. And a parent came over to the table. We were giving the information and inviting them to join a call later where we would sit down and really go through all the details. And she stopped me. She said, wait. And she runs to the chair and she grabs her folder. And I thought, okay, she didn't want to talk to me anymore. But she runs back and she opens the folder and she pulls out her iReady score for her son. And she says, I got this letter today, this assessment score. I don't know. That's basically what it was. She said, I don't know what this is. What am I supposed to do with this? I asked the teacher, we're going to have a parent teacher conference, but I don't know what to say. I don't know what to ask. What's the plan? And so we were able to really digest, okay, this is what it is. We set up some calls after that before her parent teacher conference and just walk through the tools actually that are on the Learning Heroes website, where it had a parent teacher conference planning tool on there where she can have prompts and questions that she can prepare for that meeting, because they're going to be short. They're going to be 15 minutes. Teachers have to get parents in and out, right? You don't have a lot of time. But if she went into
speed dating, I always say, Rachel, right?
Exactly.
Speed dating with the teachers. It's like, hi, here's your kid, here's the information, they're throwing it all at you, and you're like,
yes,
what?
You get 2 questions and make them quick, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so she went into that parent-teacher conference with a plan. She had the questions to ask. We had walked through what that assessment score was, and she said, I didn't realize my son was this low, and and so she was it was eye-opening for her, but to David's point, she was ready to take action and really jump in there with the teacher to figure out what could she do, how could, she was a working mom and going to school and doing all these things, and she thought, okay, well, what am I supposed to do now? And so at that parent-teacher conference, she gave me the follow-up that she thought it went well, and her and the teacher actually created a plan and what they were going to do. And so we walked through, okay, what are we looking for week to week? And so how do we do that follow-up? And it was just a really good moment. And so we've taken moments like that and we've taken them and tried to expand them, right? To reach more parents through Bridge to Hope, Activate STL, that works here with parents on the ground. STEAM works with parents on the ground, Missouri Charter School Association as well. And really just give them the information. This is what you're going to get. This is why it's important. And here's some folks that can help you walk through those processes. Here's a website, but call us, talk to us. We had Zoom calls where we would just have parents call in and ask questions that we were able to ask, and then pair them up with resources on those calls as well. And so we're going to continue to do that. And it's been a really eye-opening experience.
That is great. And it sounds like in St. Louis and in Houston and in Georgia and in Mississippi, parents are really just soaking this up. We literally have maybe about 3 minutes left before I want to bring in Howard for the next part of this conversation. But in those 3 minutes, if you guys can each take, so I used to work in TV, so I'm going to count you down. How's that? If you can each take about 30 seconds to tell me, what do you think, based on your work in your community, is the most effective way that you have found to empower parents? We now have heard from all of you. We know that parents need more information. We know that they're getting more information. We're showing advocates how to get them more information. But what is the most effective way you found to actually empower parents to take action?
I'll jump in. Face-to-face community engagement, not so much big, huge community events are great where you have a table and you're set up and you pass out your flyers, but having like the people on our team, we have team members with United Way, with the school system, with our Head Start program, all of us collaborating together and then disseminate, sending out that information. We're all sending the same message, and we're able to do this through our interactions face-to-face with parents.
Gotcha. John, I see you nodding your head about pulling different members of the community together.
Well, certainly that's what we do here in Houston. We are a United Way agency. And so our Thrive program pulls all of our different partners together because we're stronger together, and we can take a holistic service to the families that they need. When you share with them holistically, you can cover all the areas. You can feed them in every way possible. But there's something else I want to share very quickly with those who are listening and have the ability to do this. We do books instead of toys and Happy Meals at McDonald's. We go into WIC centers while those young parents are sitting there who have no clue, 15-year-olds having babies with 30-year-old grandmothers, 45-year-old great-grandmothers. The cycle just keeps going. We're in WIC centers, and we're offering little snippets of reading programs for young mothers who have no idea about reading. We put books in their hands. We talk to them about building home libraries, making sure that their babies can read so that this cycle doesn't keep going. So we do all of that in Houston, along with the information that we now have from Learning Heroes that we're going to continue to use. I'm going to be drawing that because our parents don't know that. 92% of our parents think their kids are doing great when they're not, because we haven't told them. So I agree with Kim. We got to bring them into a room and we got to tell them face to face, here's what's going on. And it's your responsibility as your child's first and most important educator to make sure that you get this done. Your baby deserves greatness. You got to help them get there.
Michelle, how's that working in Mississippi? How are you best able to empower parents?
First and foremost, you have to have trust. And you can't build trust by just a first interaction with a parent. You have to continue to build that trust. So just as Kim said, creating a coalition, and just as John said, when you're living united, I know that's cliche, but when you're living united and you're working with others, others have trust with others. And when you send out that similar information out to the parents and you work with your group of people that already trust you to share that information, that's the way to empower people, is to build trust and to build those relationships where they feel confident in taking action.
Yeah, absolutely. Because relationships don't happen overnight. This is a start and then they have to build. Lisa Greening, you get the last word.
I get in St. Louis, we started a neighborhood reading captains program where we train and compensate with a paycheck people that live in the communities where we're serving to be that trusted person to tell that block or that area all of the great educational information that they need to know.
That's amazing. Rachel, John, Michelle, Lisa, Kim, this has been great. And I love it because I think people have gotten very practical, actionable advice and examples that are actually working in communities. And there's nothing better than that. Stand by because I want to bring Howard Winchester into the conversation. Howard is with Learning Heroes. Howard, one of the things, you and I work at the national level with Learning Heroes to kind of get the awareness out there. How do you feel? I know I feel inspired really seeing what's happening on the ground level with all of this. What are you thinking about that conversation?
Yeah, so first, Tracy, thank you so much. And thanks to all of you guys I absolutely loved hearing about all of the different ways that your communities have been tackling this issue. As we know, there is no silver bullet, but all the different ways that you guys have been addressing this issue has been amazing. Turn the page, SEL with your SEL Reads materials, really meeting families where they are. I absolutely love that QR code. I think we've been seeing it over the last couple of weeks in our meetings, and we all, the first time we saw it, was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, we need to be using something like that. With John in Houston, meeting families, not just where they are, but with what they need at the door is so important. And I think it's so inspiring to hear the various approaches to supporting parents and families as their child's most effective education advocates. It's just been really, really inspiring.
Yeah, very much so. Plus, John, we got to drop that Frenchie's Chicken link in the chat.
Yes.
Because all invited us down to Houston to not only support education, but to do it with some good food too. So before we get to Q&A, and we have a lot of questions, so I do want to make sure that we have time for those. Howard, walk us through Go Beyond Grades. Talk to us about the new national campaign. We saw a little bit of the impact that it's having, but kind of walk us through how people can access these resources.
Yes. So we're super excited about the new Go Beyond Grades launch. We work with 7 national partners, including Univision, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, National PTA, GreatSchools.org, National Urban League, Unidos US, and UNCF, just to name a few, and several other of our community partners, some of which are on the call today. And we created it to highlight 3 actions families can take to team up with their teacher in an ongoing and actionable way. So I'd love to pull up the website really quickly to just walk you guys through it. And let's see if this will work.
While you're doing that, I just wanted to say it's so important. Some of the resources here that Emily just posted in the chat have very specific questions for parents to ask, right? How often do we go in and we talk to a teacher and we say, how's my kid doing? Right? So maybe that's not the question we need to ask. Maybe the question is my child on grade level in math? Because that opens a whole new conversation. But Howard, I'm going to let you walk through this.
No, absolutely. So as when you go to gobeyondgrades.org, at the top, you'll see the Gallup data followed immediately by our call to action. And we put them in an ABC sequence, right? The first A is ask if your child is on grade level, which is literally what you just mentioned, Tracy, like ask if your child is on grade level in reading and math. And then also B, be in the know about your child's learning. And then finally, C, as you mentioned earlier, Tracy, we are in that time period where parents are having parent-teacher conferences with their child's teacher, some meeting their child's teacher for the first time, but we don't want that parent-teacher conference moment to be the one and only time that you have those conversations with your child's teacher. So how can you continue to connect with them after parent-teacher conference time is over throughout the rest of the year? As we continue to, as you kind of go through these resources, this section includes research-based resources to help parents, including our readiness check, parent-teacher planning tool that Rachel mentioned earlier, and also 2 new resources to highlight, which include questions to ask your child's teacher about reading and math. So I'd love to pull up the reading very for Camping Real Reading, questions to ask your child's teacher about reading. So with the important shifts towards the science of reading that for sure we all know about, this 2-pager, it helps families know what to ask about in regard to their child's reading progress and also the school's curriculum. So as well as what to listen and look for in their teachers' responses to the questions. So you have all of these questions here for K through 8. And then if you go to the second page gives families 5 simple tips and additional resources to support their child in everyday ways, right? So, through playing, singing, talking, supporting the building blocks of reading, helping to boost their vocabulary. This includes resources from many of our partners and is by no means an exhaustive list, but it's more so a starting guide for families. So if you go back to Go Beyond Grades website, I know it's a lot. We have a ton of new resources there, including a teacher page that provides educator-facing resources to support homeschool relationships that are grounded in trust and focused on student learning and well-being. And then we also have national resources from our partners, as I mentioned earlier, WNET, greatschools.org, National PTA, and UNCF.
And if people noticed, there's that video, Sharita, I think,
yes,
that you just scrolled past. I know a lot of people were looking for that. So I am told, Howard, that we have a ton of questions, and we do have some time that we've reserved for that. So
yes.
Emily, I'm going to pull you back into the conversation and ask all of our panelists to stick around, because you are the experts here. So the questions are for you and not for me. But Emily, do you want to help us out? First of all, thank you all. I have been, while moderating, watching some of the comments pop up in the chat, and I think people are not only inspired and empowered, but enlightened by some of the things that you've shared that we hope will be helpful. Okay, so Q&A. Emily, help me out. Where can we begin?
I want to start by saying thank you to our brilliant panelists, because you've all been answering the questions, but I think a lot of these are really good ones for us to bring to the conversation. So I'm going to kind of bunch some of them together. So a couple people, and David, maybe you can kind of just help us frame. I mean, I know that the report has a very clear methodology and how the sample was created, but Kimberly, Tamara, both wanting to understand a little bit more about who completed the surveys, how it's geographic, racial, socioeconomic representation ensured, what is the age range of the children of these parents? David, if you can just kind of share a little bit about that.
And I was on mute, but yes, certainly. And I really encourage people, the report is on our website. So it's www.bealearninghero.org. And you go to our research page, and not only the Gallup report, but all of the research that we've ever done since 2016 is on that page. And so I really encourage you to take a look at it. And we go into detail on the methodology. Gallup is the gold standard just in terms of methodology specifically. And so this is through the Gallup panel, and there's information on what that means. But these are K through 12 parents, and it was weighted so that it is representative of the population of the United States. So again, I really encourage you to take a look at the report at bealearninghero.org, and it has a lot of information about how the data was collected.
Hey, Emily, I want to hop in because I know you've been curating the questions, but I saw one that I think is so very important and relevant to this, which is, has grading changed? And what does that B mean? We named the report B-Flation because there's so many other things other than standards and being on grade level and reading and doing math on grade level that are reflective of that B. David, maybe you want to take a crack at that, or to really sort of explain why is it that seeing a B is prompting me to ask more questions? Like, why isn't that okay anymore?
Yeah, it's funny because honestly, when I grew up, I would get a B and I would be so excited, because I got a B, right? But now pretty much everybody's getting Bs. 80% of parents say that their kids get all Bs and above. And so when what teachers tell us, because we've done a lot of qualitative with teachers, and what teachers tell us is that the grades on report cards aren't just about grade level mastery. They're about whether the child showed up in school. whether the child handed in their assignment, whether they spoke, in discussions in schools, whether they attended class, so it's very subjective. Now, this is all important information. It's really important information for families. And we're certainly not saying, let's not look at report cards, because report cards are very, very valid and really help parents understand kind of where their child excels and where they need some additional support. But what we're saying is go beyond grades. We're saying look at other measures, because there are other measures available. Teachers have access to a lot of measures that parents do not have access to. We start with the question, is my child at grade level? That's a way to start the conversation. We have a lot of other questions that we can ask teachers, and we have a lot of more information that teachers have access to that they can share with parents.
Okay, great. Okay, so next set of questions was kind of about Lucy, Francesca, Brianna all asked about this. What is needed? How to balance what's needed from parents to make sure they know where their kids are, progress they're making. What does this equal in terms of demands on teachers to get parents what they need? How can we hold both parents and teachers and the schools and the districts accountable for making sure everybody's on the same page?
That's such an important question.
Mm-hmm. Who wants to take that one?
Well, there's a dual capacity building process that I know many of you have heard about. There are outcomes for 3 different groups in making sure that our babies are academically, socially, and emotionally ready. There are outcomes for, of course, the student, the child, him or herself, and that teacher. But the most important outcome is that parent, that caregiver, because you set the whole tone for how that child perceives what's going to happen between both parent and teacher. And when we put a child between a parent and a teacher, and both parent and teachers are working together on the same page about everything, then the child can't get away. That child can't help but be successful, because we've got parents and teachers on both ends who are working together to make sure that everything happens. And we cannot wait for report cards. We keep talking about when the report card comes out. Well, who cares when the report card comes out? Parents, caregivers, those of you who are on this, you're your child's first teacher. You're responsible for your baby's success. You've got to go and find out what's going on before report cards are too late. You got to make sure that when that report card comes out, you and that teacher, you and that educator, and the school system, you're both a team. You're on the same team. And you've done what both of you needed to do to make sure that that baby is successful. That's the real key to what we need to do. That's our problem. That's our issue. That's our solution. Parents and teachers working together to get our babies what they need to be great.
Tracy and I'm sorry, Tracy and Emily. I do want to chime in on that. Just as I said, we have to build trusting relationships with our parents and our children. We have to build trusting relationships with our schools. We have to understand where they are and what they need and what they are capable of and what they need from us outside of the school. They have 180 days. And in those 180 days, they have responsibilities that they have to meet. And it is tight, and they are stressed, and they are tired, and the list could go on and on and on. But the conversations that we need to have is, how can we help you help the parents be the primary educators? We can't go into the school telling them what to do, just like we can't go to the parent and tell the parent what to do. It's all about building trust and relationships all the way around. And when you show that your nonprofit in your community is doing that and making progress, the school will begin to call you, and then you then provide the help that they ask for.
Michelle, I'm so glad you said that, because not just building relationships, but building trust. That's a bit of a different thing. So like, I as a parent can't just go in all gangbusters and say, hey, I got this thing showing that my kid's not reading, and what aren't you doing right because my kid's not reading on grade level? On the other hand, I as the educator can't say, well, that parent's not helping with homework. They're never showing up when we're doing these events at school, right? There has to be that level of trust, which begins with, you care about my child. you care about my student. And I think from there they can build. But you guys, please weigh in. Kim, you really start, Rachel, I know you've seen that. Kim, you start that at a very early age, right?
And I'm just going to pop in here quickly. You all see the poll in front of you. So don't stop talking, but please take a minute to complete our feedback poll. We take your feedback extremely seriously at the Campaign for Greater Reading. So please take a minute while we're continuing our conversation. Go ahead.
We do have a the number one trusted messenger for parents besides teachers are doctors, nurses, and we really focus on our child care centers, the directors and teachers in our child care centers. That is a huge group of people. One, they don't get paid enough. And that's a national crisis. They're taking care of our babies from 6 weeks old. So we do a lot with our child care providers, our private centers, to give them support and to educate them and help them have resources so they can start talking to these parents as soon as they're bringing the babies in. And that parents, that they have the same tools that classroom teachers do about reading and the importance of reading by 3rd grade and this early brain development, to bring those two pieces together. And we've even have had some centers that have partnered with local elementary schools where their child care, the kids from the child care centers feed into these local elementary schools to work together so parents feel safe and secure. They're going from one environment where they feel safe into another one. And that, again, is that team effort, that collaboration across all these different sectors.
Rachel, my apologies. I hopped in. You had a thought about trust and building trust. I know you work directly with parents.
Absolutely, no worries. So in our community, we are working with organizations like the NAACP and UNCF here in St. Louis on the ground, and to do what Michelle said, to ask our community to lean in, to ask teachers and educators and building leaders, what do you need? If we want to achieve this and get our students to grade level, what is it going to take from all of us in our community? And really building those bridges to say, okay, what does the tutoring look like? What does the funding sources look like? What do the social services look like, right? And really leaning in as a community. So we're really working with these organizations to call everyone to the table, to lean in on those things and build that trust with teachers, as well as working with parents to equip them with the tools that they can use. So when they show up with the teacher, they can really have that partnership instead of what you named is, I'm frustrated. What do we do with this? It's like, okay, we can have a conversation about this now. And then we have the community to back us up, to actually help us with the resources we need inside the schools and outside of the schools to really push in this one direction.
Emily, I think you're muted.
Of course I am. So a couple different audience members were curious about what you're thinking, if there's a difference when the child is a different age, because we've talked a lot about early learning, but there's sort of you think about it, K through 2, 3 through 5, there's middle school, there's high school. And then we have someone who asked a specific question, John, to you. This was from Jennifer about teen literacy. But so I just would love to hear from you, from everybody, how do you deal with parents and teachers for kids at different age levels?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying this. I believe firmly, because of the research and my study of some people that I trust, that college-bound capacity begins at conception. The 3rd cycle of a mother's pregnancy, the baby's neural network has developed enough to start taking on and retaining information. So we've got to get into helping people understand early is best. When we get kids off to an early start, they matriculate through their educational continuum without any problems. But when we miss that window, then we've got to go in with resources in 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th grade to really try to help catch those children up. And we have to really begin to work and depend on parental help, childcare help. Everybody has got to come together as a team at that point to begin to try to catch kids up who have missed so much. I wrote a piece that's called Can't Catch Up, Can't Catch On. Our kids can't catch up because they can't catch on. They don't have the foundational skills that they should have gotten early to be reading later. And so we got to convince folks in daycare centers, in early childhood centers, and parents sitting in WIC centers that they've got to start this process early. We've got to talk to parents and young mothers, young people who have not had babies yet, to say to them that in that womb, that third cycle, that baby's network has developed enough to begin to take on information. Read to it, hug and love it in your womb. Do all of those great things in the mommy's womb. So when that baby comes out, it comes out a little engine ready to say, I can. It's plugging away, ready to go. So to suggest to folks who are asking, there is a continuum that needs to be in place where when we miss early, we've got to team together and really bring resources to children who have missed that early window of opportunity to catch them up, because it's not easy. They've missed a lot, and it's going to take a lot to catch them up.
So I want to go to this important question from Tamara. It's in a way a little off topic, but I know it's something that all of you are dealing with. What about those kids that don't have parents that want to know? They're not asking questions, don't want to engage with the school. So what are your thoughts on how you're making sure those kids are also, somebody's caring about their progress?
I think that's where we are seeing mentors. And here's the deal. First of all, teachers are amazing, right? I was an educator in a school building. I've worked with teachers. They care about these kids and they're going to fight for these kids, especially when they see that they need an extra adult in their life. And then you've got families that got the aunties, the cousins, right? The grandfathers that show up. And they will lean in when those kids need things. And then I think about the organizations we work with in our community, like Covenant House, that are working with unhoused youth, right? And really showing up in those spaces where they don't have parents to lean on, and they're really advocating on behalf of students and showing up and standing in the gap in those spaces. So it's a community effort. It starts with the teachers, honestly, I think, because teachers will see it first. And I've seen teachers go to bat for kids. I was an advisor for 18 kids, high school girls, and when their parents couldn't show up, I showed up, right? And so I've seen that work inside of schools, as well as all the way out from families, additional family members, friends of family, and then all the way to organizations that have those types of structures in our community.
Something that just started in St. Louis is that our public library branches now all have social workers in them. And that's through taxpayer money. So it takes everyone.
Village.
I mean, when you look at the number of people who are just on this webinar today, there are so many people in our communities that care. We can catch these kids before they fall through the cracks. We absolutely can. There are teachers, there are parents, there are grandparents, there are cousins. I remember as a parent leader, everybody who showed up at the PTA meeting, it absolutely takes a village, Tamara. Everybody who showed up at the PTA meeting wasn't the parent. It was sometimes the grandparent who was raising the kid. Sometimes I went with kids in my neighborhood just because I knew that their parents were working and couldn't take them, but I happened to be free. I worked early, so I was free in the evenings. And so I think that whole "it takes a village" mentality is more important now than ever, as we're dealing with what has really become a crisis and very clear in the last couple of years.
Well, this has been such a great discussion. And, I'm very sorry for those of you who asked really good questions that we didn't have time to get to. We'll do our best to get those to our speakers and see if we can get them answered. But I want to say a huge, huge thank you to Tracy. What incredible moderation. I can assure you, we're going to ask you to come back to another GLR Learning Tuesday. Thank you to David and Howard and all that great work from Learning Heroes. You guys are so well known everywhere. And all of our amazing local leaders, Lisa and Kim and Rachel and Michelle and John. And oh my goodness, so great to hear what's working for you on the ground. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to all of our participants. We hope that you'll come back and join us. I just posted again some of how you can register for our upcoming sessions. You heard about them earlier in the webinar. But please do join us. Really enjoyed this discussion today. Thank you. Cannot say thank you enough. So enjoy your evening, everybody. And happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.